All right, testing.
Test. Good.
Okay. All right, so let's see. I was doing the first one, and the damn microphone fell. And I had to redo my whole first podcast. I was like, oh. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. It was crazy. I'm an amateur, like a loser. Actually.
That's okay. Those are funny moments.
Yeah, I know.
Those bloopers that you can put on later.
Yeah. All right. So everybody, welcome to the Sweet Advice podcast. This is the second episode, but it's actually the very first interview that we are doing, and we are here with
Daniel Martinez.
Daniel Martinez. All right. He's a very good friend of mine. And it's actually sad because I've been in El Paso for 3 years, but we've only started to hang out, 1 year?
Maybe
about a year?
A year and a half, maybe?
Year and a half?
Yeah, since Ari which was what, this year? Or
right, going to school.
Yeah, basically that's where we started.
About a year and a half, right?
Yeah, it's been about
which sucks because we've missed out on a lot of time.
Yeah.
Hanging out, doing stuff. We're a lot in common. We have a lot in common.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, I have a thing, for some reason, I get along with people that are older than me for some reason.
Yeah.
People that are, I think that happens with a lot of people, so. All right, so anyway, so Daniel is, you are a musician.
Yes.
You are a music teacher.
Right.
And you are an aspiring composer.
That's right.
Right? Or aspiring, or you are a composer? I don't want to get that.
Well, I have my music degree in composition.
Okay.
I just haven't, kept it up over the years. I mean, I've done a little bit here or there, but especially once I had my little boy.
Right,
I kind of went out the window for a while. It was like,
try having two.
There was no time for it.
Oh, God.
But now that he's a little bit older, I'm able to get back into it and stuff like that. But I have several boxes of stuff that I've written back there. Some of the things are pretty funny, actually.
Okay, so... All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to try to give the people some sweet advice on what it's like to be a musician, what it's like to try to make it in music. So we're going to start off with a little bit of your life story, a little bit of your background. So where are you from?
Actually, I'm from here in El Paso.
Okay.
Excuse me. The way it kind of started was my grandma would always listen to rancheras and stuff like that. Radio Cama.
Old school Mexican.
Yes, absolutely, man. And loud, while she'd be cleaning the house and stuff like that. So there was always music.
Would she dance with the broom?
Yes.
My grandma would do that all the time.
And sing and the whole bit, And my sisters at the same time, or my aunts, they became my sisters because my grandma adopted me. So my aunts, they were listening to like Elvis and the Beatles and all these rock dudes. So I was kind of getting a little bit of both. And in there somewhere, I remember, I don't know how this came about, but we must have been about 8, 9 years old. I had some friends across the street, Gilbert and Henry. And I recruited them because I found some instruments, some plastic instruments in my grandma's basement.
Right.
Like
a organ or keyboard or whatever it's called?
Well, it was like these little things that you would blow into, these little instruments, but they had the keys on them.
Okay.
So that you could actually then play a tune. But they were like plastic kids type instruments, cheapies and stuff. And there was a guitar down there. There were some bongos. And so, we had a little tape recorder and then a tape player. And so,
old school, you put the thing in and it closes, you press record and all that shit.
Yeah, cassettes.
Most kids don't even know what the hell that is these days.
A cassette player.
Player.
That's what
it's in a museum now.
Absolutely. It was a cassette player. And so that's what we would use. And we had a little microphone, a little cheap microphone that you would put on a little stand. And we found, while we were down there in my grandma's basement, we found a book with lyrics in it. Needless to say, we had never heard Blackbird by the Beatles.
Oh.
At least I hadn't. But there was a song, Blackbird by the Beatles. And so we decided to do our own arrangements of this Blackbird song.
Okay. Hey, that's awesome, though. How old were you at that time?
We were about 8 or 9.
Right. Hey, you're trying to play the Beatles at 8 or 9. You were bound to become a musician.
It was funny. I'm glad those tapes never survived. And then there was other what was on there. California Dreamin', Age of Aquarius, all these songs.
California Dreamin' is a good song.
Absolutely, it's a beautiful song. The harmonies are wonderful. But I wasn't familiar with these songs quite yet at that time, and so we just did our own arrangements. We just kind of sang these things and went through them, and we were very naive, but it was a lot of fun because we were getting to create stuff.
Right.
And so that was the whole thing. Then, of course, we decided to give ourselves a name, and we got some white got some T-shirts. I don't know if they were white or blue, and then we put glue on them, and then we threw glitter. It's the poor man's way of doing it,
Wait.
Poor kids.
wait, but you actually started the 80s movement back when you were... Because that's exactly what you were doing in the 80s. Jesus Christ, you're way ahead of your time, man. Way ahead of your time.
Let's try this.
Yeah. Oh, it looks awesome.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. Wow, this is great. We'd be stars. So that's the way it started. And then I would do things like puppet shows, finger puppet shows. I would get boxes, and I would cut them out, and then I would put these little curtains on there. The classic stuff, man. And then what we would do is, instead of doing the talking through the puppets and stuff, we would tape it onto a tape.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way, when we would just play the tape, and then we would just concentrate on the movements of the puppets. And when we were doing the puppets, we'd have a table on the side where we were selling lemonade and popcorn or whatever, I mean, this is what we did to try to make money as kids, because when I was a kid, my grandparents didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
And so if I wanted something, back in those days, corriendo, ahorita vamos a comprártelo, ¿Y cómo te lo vamos con tus, what, we're going to buy it with your looks or what? That kind of stuff.
You think money grows on trees?
Absolutely. So we never had any money for anything, you know what I mean? And so you have to get creative in how we're going to make some money. So my friend Henry had a garage. We'd put partitions up, and we'd make a haunted house, and we'd charge a dime or a nickel for people to come in.
Yeah.
The kids from the block would come, and we'd make our little money. We'd do puppet shows, always something like that. And then going around, eventually, because I know we're talking about the music, but I also used to sell Christmas cards door to door.
Oh wow!
And because, like I said, back that's. And it wasn't anything that I really thought about. It was like, okay, I want to make some money a little bit. So I just went door to door selling Christmas cards, which was, I didn't realize it at the time, it was a great experience. Great experience in getting in there and selling and being rejected and just continuing to go,
It builds character.
Yeah, and not taking rejection personally.
Right,
It's like, okay, they said no big deal, let's just move on to the next. But anyways, going back to the music, we used to do these recordings as kids. And eventually, Henry never went into music. He went off and he started doing something else. He's passed now, but Gilbert did go into music. But I'm the only one who actually went after a degree and finished that whole process.
Okay.
Eventually, at some point, I got into the elementary school band. But I wanted to, they stuck me on the trumpet. And I was terrible, man. It was terrible. I'd sit out there blowing on this thing. Trumpet, the mouthpiece is tiny,
you gotta,
man.
Tighten your lips up.
You gotta
and shit.
blow into that little thing, man. I was like, and the icing on the cake was my neighbor comes over. He's a friend. He's like, "Hey, Dan, was that you blowing on that trumpet?" I said, "Yeah." Well, yeah, you sound like a sick frog. It's like, oh, thanks a lot, pal. Thanks for the support.
When I was in middle school, I wanted to play an instrument. Mm-hmm. I was into music and stuff, and so all the cool instruments were taken, like the drums.
Oh yes,
they were all taken, and then what else did they have? I didn't want to play the clarinet because that most guys don't play the clarinet. I didn't want to play the trumpet because that looked really hard, and I tried it, and my lips went numb within 2 minutes. I was like, oh hell no, I'm not doing this. So the saxophone was available.
Oh yeah, sweet.
And I think it was the alto sax. Uh-huh. And I never really got good at it. I played 3 years in middle school, and I could play Silent Night.
Oh yeah.
But all horrible.
All broken.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. But then I got into high school, and then I switched to guitar.
Oh, yes.
And that's where, I really started. I wanted to learn guitar and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you are a pretty amazing guitar player. So how did you get
thanks.
into that?
Actually, how that happened is I was between my junior and senior year in high school when I started to play. Like I was a late bloomer because I was a drummer up until that point.
Oh, drummer. Okay.
And I played at drums till I was a senior in high school till I graduated. I played in the high school band doing all that stuff.
Like a garage band?
I did that too. I had a friend had a drum set, and I had a little drum set at home, and I even have a drum set now. And I would practice. I'd put the songs on, put the headphones, and I would learn the songs.
Mm-hmm.
But somewhere along the way, I don't know what it was that I heard. It might have been Van Halen or Ace Frehley from Kiss, and that was the end of that. And so one day, my friend, I didn't have a guitar. My friend Gilbert had the guitar. So I would borrow his guitar. And back in those days, there was a company, music company here in El Paso called May and Duncan. I just simply went down there and bought a couple of books on how to learn to play the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Mel Bay, learn to play the guitar.
Oh, back then there was no YouTube.
Yeah.
Now you can learn anything you want.
There was nothing
YouTube,
like
man.
that. There was nothing like that. But you know what? It was a godsend, man, because it forced you to learn in a different way than kids learn today. It's a little bit more concentrated.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when I was a kid, if you wanted to learn the guitar solo to any of the Van Halen songs, they weren't in the books. They gave you the chord progressions, the lyrics, and then when it came down to the solo, it was good luck. Figure it out.
Right, just figure it with your ear.
Yeah, and even for the most part, the chords were not the actual chords. It was just the general chord here. Look, it's somewhere in A. You figure out which one,
Right.
And so
if you're a real musician, you'd figure it out.
Absolutely. And so it's like, okay, and so it's an A, so you kind of tune to this. And then the great thing about it was I was learning a lot through playing the cassette. You play, stop, play, stop.
Right.
Imitate over and over and over, man. And that's the way I learned to play. And it was a godsend because it trained my ear. It trained my ear to nowadays where I hear a guitar player doing something, I know what he's doing. I can hear the lick, and I can, okay, this is what he's doing, and it's a scale or it's a typical blues lick or whatever it might be, and I can hear it, and I go, okay. But that came through that continuous process. Today, the way kids learn is everything's written out for them in the book.
Right.
And a lot of them don't check it, so that human beings write books, man. And some of these human beings make mistakes. And you can tell that some of these kids will learn these and they will learn the mistakes right along with what's in there because they're just copying what's in that book. But it's a different process than actually having to listen to it and hear it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
It's a different type of imitation. I think that where you're having to listen to it without some book and having to listen to figure it out is more concentrated. Mm-hmm. You're having to really apply yourself a little bit more than I'll just follow this.
Right. That's the thing is like, I tell people like, look, there's a difference between skill and real talent.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's a lot of people out there that can pick up a guitar right here, right now, play Van Halen.
Oh, absolutely.
They can play Kirk Hammett. They can play Joe Satriani. They can play all these people. And the people that are listening probably didn't know who the hell is all these people he's listening to. They're awesome guitar players, right? Some of the best in the world. But there's people that can imitate, but they're not producing those pieces of music that those guys were creating. And that's the big difference.
Absolutely.
And
to create is a totally different thing. To imitate, I mean, look, you see these Chinese kids, 5 years old, and they're playing some amazing shit. All they're doing is imitating. But if you ask that kid, what is this? They won't be able to tell you.
Right. What are the progressions? What's the scale?
They won't be able to tell you because they're just imitating.
It's by ear. Yeah.
But if anything, what that proves is the level that human beings can imitate. Do you see? But that doesn't mean they understand it. You know, to imitate it is okay. Parrots can imitate, but then can you take that and create something of your own with it? Can you take that and make something your own? And I think that's where the whole process, in my opinion, comes in. You take, as a guitar player, you take some Joe Satriani, some Van Halen, some Randy Rhoads over here, some of this guy over here. You kind of mix these things together and you create your own soup.
Right.
And you create your own, this is how I hear this. It's like Hendrix said, I hear these sounds in my head, and if I don't get them together, who's going to do it? And it's true, because it's like, your voice is your voice. Your dream is your dream.
Right.
And even if your dream is similar to somebody else's, it's still your dream.
Right. You're tweaking it. You're putting your little
absolutely
exclamation mark on it
absolutely.
And saying, this is me.
So your sounds are your sounds. The way that, say, like I was talking to you about the other day, the way that Mozart does something and puts his chord progressions together and the way Beethoven they're very different. There's some similarities, of course, but if you really look at the nuances of what they've done, it's like, whoa.
Right.
There's some pretty incredible differences in there,
Yeah, I mean, imitations. I remember I can't even say the story. When I was like in 9th grade, 10th grade, no, maybe, somewhere in high school, I was playing for my church. I played guitar for my church band. Shout out to Reno and Homan who are listening to this. Man, so I wanted to learn how to play. So the pastor of the church, he had bought me this amplifier, pedal board, and then he bought me this DVD, right? He's like, hey, you want to learn how to play guitar? I think this will help you, right? And so the DVD was how to play Eric Clapton, right? Eric Clapton is awesome musician, right? And so it was like one of those how-to pain-free, easy, step-by-step, books.
Right.
And so I popped the DVD in, and it's not Eric Clapton, though. It's like a guy who looks like Eric Clapton.
From the mask.
He's got like this mullet. It's an amazing mullet. Like I can stand at it. But he was wearing like this V-neck open, and he had like all this chest hair coming out.
Like the disco era. Did he have the chains?
He had a chain with a ring on the chain, and that's all I remember. Right? I couldn't concentrate. I'm trying to play, and this dude's like moving, and you could see the chest hair rubbing up against the chain. I was like, you know what? That is enough of this goddamn DVD. We're not watching this anymore. So, needless to say, I never learned how to play Eric Clapton. It was horrible. It was horrible.
God. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But anyway, so at some point, I heard Eddie Van Halen and stuff and Randy Rhoads. Those two were my favorites at that point. And then Ace Frehley, of course. And then when I got into Randy Rhoads, that's when I started getting into classical music. Because that's what he was into.
Oh, that's Randy Rhoads and classical music?
Yeah, because Randy Rhoads was into classical music.
Ah.
And so he would mention certain pieces in his interviews.
Wait, for the people who don't know who Randy Rhoads is,
he was Ozzy Osbourne's first guitarist when Ozzy went solo after Black Sabbath fired him.
And Randy Rhoads considered to be one of the greatest guitarists in a short period of time that he was with Ozzy Osbourne.
Absolutely. And he, as a matter of fact, today is the 25th anniversary.
Today?
Yes, March 19th.
March 19th.
And I got to see him, what was it, February, a month or two before he passed away. I saw him at the Coliseum.
Here in El Paso?
Here in El Paso. Yeah, that was a great experience.
Wow.
Wonderful experience to get to see that. But anyway, so that's how I got into classical music, actually. He started mentioning pieces, and I was becoming a more serious musician. In other words, I was...
How did he mention classical music?
They would ask him about it,
like interviews and stuff?
Yeah, in his interviews. And so he would mention certain pieces, or he would talk about classical music being his influence and how he was mixing things like that.
Right.
And you could hear it in his music.
That's pretty awesome, because then you're like, wait a minute, this heavy metal hardcore dude is talking about Mozart, Beethoven, all these Vivaldi.
Absolutely.
And you're like, wait a minute, so let me check it out. What is this all about?
Absolutely.
And so that's how you got into classical music.
That's how I got into classical music. And I loved it, man. I was just like, whoa, this is some heavy shit, man, Right. So I started listening to a little bit of that and picking it up a little bit more. And then somewhere in there, it's like, okay, let's try this classical guitar stuff. And once again, I went down to the store and I bought some classical guitar book, and I started playing through that.
Now, how old were you when you started this classical?
At that point, I was already in my 20s. I was 20, 21, somewhere about there by when I started classical guitar. I never had taken a lesson in my life up to that point, which was unfortunate. Because,
so what happened after high school?
After high school, actually, I became a dishwasher. And I was a dishwasher.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I call it, I give it a more dignified name. I was a pearl diver. I was a pearl diver.
Nice.
And I was in a band, And I also...
if you hit the wire.
Oh, this thing here?
Yeah.
Okay. And I was in a band at the time also. And my guitar at that time was... it was a copy of a Les Paul Sunburst, the Ace Frehley model. But
the badass guitars.
Yeah, but
the ones that look badass.
But mine was from Sears. But when I got it, man, it was bad. Because it was back in those days when you can order from Sears on the catalog. And so
the Sears catalog.
I saw this guitar on there, and my aunt bought it for me. We went over when it arrived and picked it up, and it wasn't really playable, man. It was terrible. The frets were, as a friend said, these frets are like nails, man.
Right? Yeah, they hurt your fingers horribly. Yeah? And it turns it all like into silver dust and. You get gunk inside of there. It's horrible.
Absolutely. So it was pretty bad. So I took the guitar over to Barry. I can't remember. He's over by. He's one of the guitar techs here in El Paso, from Frets and Necks. So I took it to him, and I'm talking to him on the phone, and he's like, this thing is pretty bad, man.
I don't want to hurt your feelings, but this is a piece of shit.
That's about it. He even asked me. You know what he said? He goes, "Can you take it back?"
Did you keep the receipt, buddy?
Yeah. And I was like,
"What's the return policy on this?"
I don't think so, man. So he's like,
"I got chipped."
He's like, "All right, well, I'll do the best that I can, man."
Gee golly, mister, can you take this back, please? Back in those days.
Yeah, it was a clunker, man. So he fixed it, and it was decent after that, but that's kind of what I used. I was, like I said, at that point, I was working as a pearl diver, so I was making minimum wage in those days. Was
$5?
$3.50.
$3.50?
Yeah, $3.75, something like that.
Man.
And then I was living with my grandparents, so I wasn't really making a lot of money. And and then as a band and a bunch of naive teenagers or young adults, we just weren't doing very well. The knowledge of how to run the thing didn't come in for me till later. I think kids have a lot of dreams, but you need to realize that it's a business, and you need to run it as such.
Right.
Because there is no other way. The guys that make it are not doing it as a joke or just for fun.
Right.
They're doing it because they take it seriously, and they've been doing it seriously for years. They look like they're having a great time, and they are. But it's work. It's hard work, and it's. This is your Twinkie, man.
Right. It's how you're going to eat.
Absolutely. And so...
Start a family and buy a house.
And those were the things that we were very naive as teenagers and as young adults, the whole thing of, free food and free beer, because we were so poor. It was like, yeah, okay. But that doesn't cut it. And also poor equipment is
like what we have here. These cheap-ass microphones I got here. I mean, they're doing it. I hope you guys can hear it. But, we need to upgrade some of this stuff. But... I got a dream too to have better microphones and a better camera.
Donate.
The Sweet Advice Podcast needs you.
That's right. So, but I mean, it'll be your limiting factor, and I didn't realize the value of good instruments too much later when I was able to afford them. But anyway, so then I got into the classical thing, and I bought a book, and then I was listening to getting into the classical thing, I was listening to KTEP, the university radio station. They play
KTEP?
Yeah.
Like UTEP, but KTEP?
Yes.
Okay.
And they play classical music, and they play jazz and a lot of stuff, but there's a certain time of the day where they play classical music. And during that time, they announced that at that point, Randy Reed was the classical guitar teacher at UTEP, and he was going to be having a concert. I was like, hey. And so they played one of his songs. I was like, hey, I'm going to go check this dude out, man. He was really good. So I went to his concert. After his concert, like a naive little teenager, or I was 20, at the time, somewhere about there. I'm sitting out there, and I wonder if I could go back there and meet him. And one of his students passed by, and he goes, yeah, come on over.
Right.
So I was like, oh, wow, cool. So I just walked back there, and he introduced me to him, and I met him, and I said, hey, how do I get to take lessons with you? And he said, just call the university. He said, sign up and the whole bit. So I went ahead and signed up to go to school and the whole bit, become a music major.
Yeah, I don't think there's that many people clawing at the door to get into the composing music program.
Yeah, at that point I was doing classical guitar. I hadn't done the composition yet. But so I was doing the classical guitar thing, and then so I got in with him, and he had probably, I don't know, man, he had a good number of students actually. All of them, quite a number of very, very good. And so I went in there and I played for him, and he said, all right, he goes, why don't you come into my studio and stuff? And, so you get into the program, and part of the program is a class called repertory. And in repertory class, basically what it is you perform for each other. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now you have to remember, I'm the new kid on the block. I'm a freshman.
Right.
And all these dudes are sophomores, juniors, and seniors. They all know the pieces. Okay. So nothing that you're playing is nothing that they haven't heard.
Right. And they're looking at you like, what do you got, scrub?
They're just sitting there looking at you, and they're very good. Some of these guys are just, wow, really incredible players, very good players. And so I remember I was going to play, what was I playing? I think I was playing a prelude by Leopold Weiss. And so I get up there to play this thing, and it was terrible. I killed this piece. I mean, not kill as in a good way. I killed it. Right. I was so nervous. My fingers were falling through the strings, dude. I was like, what am I doing here? Oh my god!
No, did you practice, like when you practiced and you were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do good, and then was it like stage fright or something?
Yes. No, I don't know what it was. I think it was stage fright because it was one of my first times to get up there to do that. Mm-hmm. But I remember I practiced what I thought was hard, and I practiced, and I remember. I'll tell the rest of the story in a minute. But anyways, I went up there, and so it was terrible. And so I asked my teacher, I'm gonna redeem myself. I'm thinking, can I do it again? Okay. So I did it again. Even worse than the first time. And I was like,
Jesus Christ.
I was like, oh my God, this could possibly be happening.
Oh, man.
So,
it happens to everybody.
Absolutely. So I get off, and I go over there. And of course, none of the other guys say anything because to them it's like, this happens. Right. But to somebody new, it's traumatic.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's traumatic. It's like, oh my God. It was so traumatic that after I got out of class, back in those days, UTEP had the parking lot. It didn't have that big parking garage there. Okay. It just had a parking lot, and from the top of the music building, you could look right over into Juarez. Okay. So there was a parking lot, there's a dumpster over there, stuff like that. I was so upset. I grabbed my guitar and I tossed it into that dumpster. And,
the Sears and Roebuck one?
No, I had bought
the flamenco guitar?
No, it was in a flamenco. It was a Yamaha classical student model that I had bought.
Okay,
for like $150 or something like that. They're good beginner guitars, the Yamahas. But I tossed that sucker into the dumpster, man. I was so upset. And I'm sitting there, and my girlfriend at the time passes by, and she must have noticed. I must have shown. She's, oh my God, what happened? So she gets out of the car and she comes over and starts talking. And then the girl, she's such a sweetheart. She crawls into the dumpster to get my guitar, man. Nice. Pulls my guitar out and stuff, and it was like, I was so bummed. But you know what? It was one of the best experiences I ever had. Right. Because it angered me so much, Dave, that I practiced my ass off. Right. I was determined to that never happen again. By the end of the semester, I could get up there and play through the pieces, man. No problem.
Just as good as everybody else.
Just as good as everybody else. Yeah. I was determined. It angered me because I thought that I had worked hard, and it turned out that no, you hadn't worked hard. It's like, I guess you might relate it to a young boxer who thinks that he's ready and skilled, and he goes in and he gets his ass kicked, and it's like, oh man. Yeah,
you weren't ready.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, think about that
Watching
guy's mindset.
YouTube videos ain't gonna make you ready.
Absolutely. Think about the guy's mindset. It's like, oh shit. Right. And then one of two things is gonna happen. You're either gonna quit, or you're gonna say, you know what? I'm gonna get in there and work. I'm gonna prove to myself that I can do this. And that was my reaction. I got very angry. And I got in there, and like I said, by the end of the year,
and see, that's the thing we were talking about the other day is. Mm-hmm. When you look at these great musicians, I mean, these guys were practicing. Oh, yeah. I think I read something like Slash. Yeah. Like this dude would, basically he would skip class. Yeah. And he would play his guitar 12 hours a day.
Absolutely.
Don't skip class, kids. All right.
Yeah.
But that's what it takes. If you want to be on top of the world, you want to be the best in the world. you need to practice 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Absolutely.
I mean, everybody will know your talents. It'll be undeniable because you put the work in.
Absolutely. You know, Segovia had a saying. He goes, if I don't practice for 1 day, he says, I will know. He says, if I don't practice for 2 days, he says, everybody will know.
Who is this again?
Segovia, who's one of the greatest. I mean, the guy, Segovia is the reason there are classical guitar programs in all the high schools.
Really?
Segovia is the reason the guitar is now on the concert stages. Before Segovia came around, the guitar was a parlor instrument.
Right, like in the
back
background.
rooms, and you just hung around in the parlors or the bars singing stuff. It was never in a classical concert stage. You would never hear it over at Chavez Theater.
Right, it wasn't the highlight of the night.
No. It was because of Segovia that he brought it to that level.
Wow, was he from like Spain or something?
Yeah. The Spaniards pretty much refined the art. It comes from all over the world, obviously.
Argentina, Spain.
Yeah, but they kind of refined it. But anyways, that he's the reason for all that stuff that we have what we have. That a lot of the technique that is used today on the classical guitar is because of him.
Okay, so did you? I don't remember if you told me you went to University of Texas as well, to Austin?
Yeah, I did. What happened is when I was at UTEP, I was doing classical guitar, and then I also got into voice.
Like radio voiceover?
No, singing voice, that kind of stuff, the operatic kind of thing. Back in those days, though,
I couldn't imagine you singing.
Yeah, I was doing opera. I'm a baritone.
Wow.
A guy like Robert Plant or John Anderson of Yes, those guys are the clouds for me, man.
Wow.
An impossibility unless if I use my falsetto. I sang. I studied with Prentice Lofton and Hugh Carden at UTEP, and then I studied with Jess Walters at UT Austin.
So how'd you end up in Austin?
You know what? I really don't remember how that happened. I had a friend.
I was in El Paso at one point. I woke up in Austin.
It was like, I don't know how much I had to drink, and who knows what else we ingested.
Jesus.
And the next thing I know, I'm waking up in Austin. No, actually, I had a friend who I had played in a band here in El Paso, and he went to UT. So we had kept in contact, and one summer we had talked, and he said, hey, man, why don't you come on down, and, and we can get something going and stuff like that. But at the time, he already had a band. He already had something going. So I said, all right, well, let me come on down there. So I went down there and applied to UT and got in the whole bit, and went, and when I left, it was really funny because Prentice said, and he was right. But it goes to show how naive I was. And because nobody told me I couldn't do it, I did it.
Right.
So he told me, Prentice was like, well, you're probably going to wind up with a teacher's assistant and stuff like that. And normally, in the position that I was in, I would have. But I didn't listen to that. I just went over there, and all I did, Dave, was I went and found this guy, and his name was Jess Walters, and he was a baritone like me, and I just wrote him a note.
Wow.
I just wrote a note. This is who I am, blah, blah, blah. That's right. And I put it on his door.
Old school.
And he called me. So I went over there and I talked to him, and I got to study with an actual teacher as opposed to a TA. I went over there. He said, sing something for me. He said, all right, cool. You're in.
I'd be like, look, bro.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in your teachers. I want to learn from the master.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be with a teacher's assistant. I want to be with the dude. And he was an opera singer in London during World War II. He'd show me the pictures. He'd go to the library and he'd pull out the books. Look, that's me.
Right. And, that's pretty amazing because I always tell my students, like, you just have to ask.
Yeah.
People don't like to ask for anything for some reason. Either you're scared or whatever. I don't know what the hell's going on in your brain, but people are shy or
absolutely,
and they don't want to ask. It's like, you know what? Sometimes if you just ask,
absolutely,
people will be like, yeah, you know what? I've been wanting somebody to ask me,
absolutely,
because nobody's asked me,
absolutely,
and it just kind of happens that way. You just have to put yourself out there.
They don't look. The way that I tell my kids is, you're already at no, man. Take a chance.
Right. What do you have to lose?
Absolutely. What do you have to lose? Suppose they say yes. All right, you're on the way, man.
Now you're winning.
Absolutely. And all you have to do was ask. Asking takes many forms, but look, you're not going to get what you want if you don't ask. It's that simple. So, and so then I went to that, and I studied with him for a year. And then at that time, I decided, you know what, I've done good with the classical singing, blah, blah, that's fine. But I wanted to go back to study classical guitar. The unfortunate point there was that UT Austin at that point did not have a classical guitar program. And they weren't going to have one anytime soon.
Right, because Austin was into the whole rock scene. I mean, right? Austin is a weird place. They have the whole Keep Austin Weird.
They have the Americana
Keep
stuff.
Austin Weird, bro.
Yeah.
Right, but Austin is what is considered the music capital of the world, right?
You know what a friend of mine here says? He goes, look, Austin is redneck with a veneer of sophistication.
Jesus. Hey, it might be onto something.
That puts them in their place.
It might be onto something.
Just plain, Austin. Just plain.
They consider themselves avant-garde.
But see, that's the thing. Look, to me, all that thinking is a crock of shit. And you know why? Look, because it's like avant-garde according to who? You?
Right.
Your opinion? In other words, avant-garde will be something that is acceptable to you in that style. I'll give you an example. When I went to college in Seattle, I was at the Small Fine Arts School, and everybody was into being unique and original and it's a crock of shit because it's like, look, they want you to be unique and original, but they won't like you unless if you're unique and original like them.
Right.
It's a bunch of bull. It's just a bunch of more, what do they call it, political correct crap.
What's that saying? All you non-conformists are the same.
That's exactly what it was.
That's what it is.
That's exactly what it was. And they went
hey, bro, you want to join our clique, man? It's like, get out of here.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. When I finally did go to Cornish in Seattle, it was kind of a weird situation because there was those who liked me, and there were those who didn't. And I was very unapologetic.
Right.
I was. Fuck you. I don't care what you think. I'm not here to please you. And so some of the teachers didn't like me, and I think they didn't like me because I had a lot of talent and I didn't take it seriously.
Oh, yeah.
In their eyes,
talent.
In their eyes, I didn't take it seriously.
Right. But you were doing what you could.
Could I?
Or not.
I was doing what I could at the time because, look, I had no resources. I was a poor kid. The guy that was sleeping on the floor.
Right.
And that
so
kind of stuff.
from Austin, you went to Seattle.
No. From Austin, I came back to El Paso for a little bit. And then that's the thing. When I came back to El Paso to study classical guitar, I only studied it for one more semester because then UTEP decided to cut the program.
Oh.
So I was like, shit. So then...
damn, UTEP. Get your shit together.
So Randy wound up going to Duke, and he's still there. And I studied then jazz guitar with Kurt Warren.
Okay, who's that?
He used to be the jazz guitar teacher at UTEP. He's now retired. Lives in Hawaii.
Oh.
Nice kid. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anyway, so really nice
Poor
guy.
bastard.
Really nice guy. And a bebop jazz player, man. That dude was like George Benson. He could sing a line and then play it. To me, I was always
mimicking what he sings?
Yeah. But he could sing a line first and then play it.
Like Peter Frampton?
Yeah, or like George Benson is that dude.
Right.
And then he played. I was like, man, your ear has to be sharp for stuff like that. But anyways, those guys. I mean, he was another really influential guy that I learned a lot from. I don't consider myself a jazz guitar player. I can fake my way through a couple of tunes, and I can read a jazz chart. But jazz to me is like anything else. The guys that do it all the time, the Marsalis family, those guys are jazz musicians. That's what they do. You know what I mean? A guy like me that pops into it every once in a while, it's not a jazz musician.
No, jazz is hard.
Yeah, like I said, I can imitate it. I can fake my way through a couple of tunes. I can write a jazz song, but that doesn't make me a jazz musician.
So you came back to El Paso, studied a little bit of jazz guitar.
So I studied a little bit of jazz guitar with Kurt Warren, and then I quit. I got out of school altogether, and I still kept playing band in music.
Like garage bands? Or?
Yeah, but this time I started working for an airport shuttle service, and I was playing in a blues rockabilly band. Pompadours and the whole bit, man, the Roach Stompers and all that kind of stuff. Basically, in those days, it was just a Fender Stratocaster plugged into an amp, no FX, no nothing, and you go.
Raw,
man. And that's what I was doing with this
Some
band.
of the best sound, though.
We were called the Dice Men.
The Dice Men. I love it.
Because back then, Andrew Dice Clay was really big.
Hey, oh.
So I was fucking...
Hickory dickory dock.
So I had my tongue up. It's like, what?
Hey, oh.
I know. So anyways, we call ourselves the Dice Men.
The Dice Men, nice.
Yeah, and
he'd be proud. Andrew Dice, have you ever listened to this?
That's right.
That's a shout out to you, Andrew Dice.
Thanks for the inspiration, brother. So anyways, and we were actually pretty good. We did pretty good. We played some of the clubs here and stuff like that. We played with some bands, some blues band came out from Chicago. We got to play along with them and stuff like that. Got to meet a bunch of people. And we did that for a little bit. But I always had, felt too limited. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Well, in other words, doing just blues and that style of music because...
That's not what you wanted to do.
Well, I enjoy it, I like it, and I don't mind doing it, but
it's not your passion.
There was still another part of me that I want to rock out, man.
Right.
You know, I want to punch in that distortion and go, man.
And then get all the groupies and the babes and all the free drinks that come with it.
The thing is, each genre, like everything else, has their groupies, man.
Right.
They have their chance.
Oh, yeah. Any musician has a following.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I did the blues thing with those guys for a while. That was a lot of fun. And did that for a bit. And then at some point, while I was working for the airport shuttle service, I decided I needed to go back to school to finish. And the good thing about working for the airport shuttle service is NAFTA had just kind of been signed.
NAFTA?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so a lot of the companies from northern United States were coming down here because they were doing business with Juarez.
Right.
So there was all these guys coming down, and I met some of them who came down from Seattle. And I picked them up, and I was sending them over, and they had noticed that I had an application for the University of Washington because I had sent for an application packet just to see what was going on and stuff. And they mentioned that, you know, the city of Seattle contributes 1% of their tax dollars to the arts and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I was like, wow, that sounds really cool. Let's check it out. So I started researching the city of Seattle, beautiful city. Very well-educated city and all that kind of stuff. And so I started looking for schools there, and I just sent an application up to Cornish. I recorded some stuff, wrote out a couple of things, sent them up, and I got accepted.
Nice.
And I didn't know anybody up there, 2,000 or so miles away from home. And I just packed up my shit and I went.
Nice.
And it was a wonderful experience, to say the least.
What year was this?
This was 1991.
Oh.
I got there in August of 1991.
So you were right in the grunge scene.
Yes. As a matter of fact, yes. Right into the thick of it.
I would have killed to be in Seattle in the 90s.
It was exciting, dude. You could actually feel the electricity. It was wonderful.
In the whole city.
Yeah. I mean, you could feel it. But Seattle was different then than when it became later.
Right.
Because once the whole grunge scene,
it's corporate
and
America,
then everybody starts moving in, and you start getting in people who don't necessarily have the interest of the people who were originally there,
right,
or who were creating this thing. You know, you start getting people in who are, it's about me, all about me, and screw everybody else. You know, but up to that point, when I got there, Seattle still had a very small town feel. And it was great, man. People were very friendly, easy to get to know folks.
Wait, so did you get to go to like Nirvana playing just at an open mic or Soundgarden?
Those guys, you would walk. I would run into them just walking down Broadway Street, or even at the. I can't recall.
Really, like you like shook their hand and
no, I wasn't like that. I was just saying, hey man, I'm not that kind of guy. Because I'm not the kind of guy that, hey man, you know,
can I get a picture?
I'm already at an age where it's like, oh, they're fellow musicians, they do work, and hey, how's it going?
Just a simple nod.
Yeah, it's like, hey man, how you doing? Good.
Some acknowledgement.
You'd run into them, you know, over at there's a Quality Food Mart or something right there in Harrison and Republican. You'd run into the guys there, you know, walking around doing their thing and stuff like that.
Grocery shopping.
Yeah. You know, I used to work for a travel agency, so I knew where Kurt Cobain's house was because, you know, he had it down by the marina because we had several accounts there. So I'd drive by his house almost every day.
Wow.
I knew where Eddie Vedder's house was in West Seattle at that point. you know, going up the hill, right across from Lincoln Park. Chris Cornell used to live out in West Seattle also. At some point, I think he moved out.
Okay.
He moved out, and several of them.
To LA?
Yeah, I think several of them at some point moved.
Hmm.
But like I was telling you, you know, back in those days, the heroin craze was really insane. But anyways, going back, you know, before heading into that, going back into, you know, how I got to Cornish and stuff. So I got in there and went in there and did some composition stuff, and I studied with Berner Oblesheimer, who's passed away now. But it was interesting because I was very, like I said, I was very non-apologetic. I would write stuff, and like I remember I wrote this one song. We were imitating this composer named George Crumb. So being
Sounds familiar.
So being the serious guy that I was, my piece was called Part 1 Crummy Music.
Yes, yes. And they didn't. I'm assuming they took offense to that. How dare you?
It got worse because see the thing was about these pieces was that we were supposed to write them, and there was this faculty group that was then supposed to perform them. They didn't want to perform my piece because in there was this section where it says moaning as in having sex. And the girl who's supposed to sing it, she's going, well, you know, that's kind of personal. And I go, that's the whole point.
Wait, aren't we in Seattle?
Yes, absolutely.
Excuse me?
Absolutely.
I mean,
in this liberal school where it's
right.
about, you know.
Avant-garde.
Absolutely.
So, wait, how was it supposed to be sung?
Well, actually, if you listen to George Crumb's music, it's kind of very interesting. It almost seems broken. It's not quite that way, but the way that it's written. But it was supposed to be sung. There's a part where it's coming, and then it does this drum thing, and then all of a sudden there's this part where it's like, you know, you start moaning, man, like having sex. And she's like, that's kind of personal. She's like, would you like to give me an example? And I was like, yeah, baby.
You got to throw the baby in there.
Oh yeah. Start doing the hubba. You know, I just started screwing around with her. I was like, come on, man.
Yeah, figure it out. You're an artiste.
Absolutely. You know, and needless to say, of course, they weren't too pleased, and they didn't perform my piece.
Oh, that sucks.
You know, I know. I'm like,
that would have been epic.
Absolutely.
I would have stood up and I would have started a slow clap, and then all the way.
I don't know if this is our podcast, but I got to take a piss.
Oh, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I shall return.
So anyway, moaning as in having
sex. Part 1 crummy.
Oh man. Anyway, so I was at this guy's house maybe about a month ago, and so he busts out his guitar, and I can barely play some chords. You know, I played church band, and you know, I was just messing around, and he's like, and so I gave it to him, and so he just starts wailing on this guitar, playing all kinds of music, all kinds of, you know, Kiss and Van Halen and Metallica, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, all kinds of stuff. That guy's an amazing musician. And, you know, it goes back to what we were talking about, experience. You got to have dedication. You got to just work at it. Things are not going to come easy for you. You got to keep going. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep just, you know, practicing, man. You got to put your heart and soul into it. You got to be dedicated. That's what it's all about. I mean, anything you do is it's practice. And anybody will tell you that. Anybody who has done anything semi-successful, who's done anything, you know, remotely close to being successful, it takes hard work, dedication. That's a whole Mayweather saying, right? Floyd Mayweather. Hard work and dedication. So, and that's what we're trying to do here is we're trying to give you some advice. To those of you who want to be musicians, that's what it takes, right? And sometimes it's trial and error. Failure is an option. Sometimes you have to fall to get up, to understand where your faults are. Oh, come on in. Don't worry about it.
It's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. We're raw. This podcast is raw, man. It's raw dog.
All right, raw dog. All right, man.
Do me a favor. Push this in. I don't want it to fall.
This thing here?
Yeah. Just push it in. See if it's all the way in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, there it goes. Cool.
All right.
All right, so you're in Seattle.
So anyway, so that was one of the songs that I'd written. You know, it was part one crummy music, and then they wouldn't do it. But my, some of the other stuff that I did, like I wrote some pieces for folk music. I wrote some folk songs, and those turned out pretty nice. The music that I wrote was very different. It was very a little more jazzy, I think, with a little of classical influence, because I would use seventh chords and things like that, jazz, and then use them as jazz progressions. So I did a lot of that writing stuff, and I graduated in 2.5, 3 years, something like that. And then after I got out, I went and joined the workforce at Starbucks.
I thought you were going to say the Marines.
Yeah. No way, man. Those guys are too badass for me.
So you went to Starbucks.
Yeah,
oh,
I worked at the roasting plant.
So
I had 2 jobs. As a matter of fact, my senior year, I had 2 jobs and was going to school. I would work at Starbucks from 7 to 3. And then I would work at an Asian restaurant from 4 to 10, sometimes 2:30 to 10, depending on the hours I had Starbucks. And then I'd go home and I'd compose, sleep maybe 3-4 hours, and then redo it again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hustler.
The thing about it is that you learn that you can take a little bit more than you thought. You know, when you really push yourself, and when you're in the deadlines are important, man.
Yeah,
deadlines are important because if we didn't have deadlines the way humans are, tomorrow.
Oh, procrastination, man.
Nothing would ever get done. So I remember it got to a point where it's like, all right, I got 3 months to do my senior program, and I had nothing.
That sounds about right.
So I was like,
3 days, I still have nothing.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I got to write some music. I got to put it on paper. I got to make the copies, get the people together, get the rehearsals, all this kind of stuff. And I've got to give a shout out to my friend Randy Hathaway out in Seattle, who's a fine composer himself, by the way.
All right, Randy.
He helped me a lot. Because Randy, when I wasn't there, I'd call Randy, hey, can you run some rehearsals for me? And he would run them for me.
Nice.
And he learned the guitar parts, and the guitar parts were pretty hefty. Mm-hmm. My junior year, I did for my junior recital, I did a flamenco type piece. It was a mixture of classical and flamenco, and I had a flamenco dancer that I had hired. Back in those days, being a poor student, you save every penny, and I remember, everything's counted out and the whole bit, and so I hired this flamenco dancer for like $300 or something like that to do under 5 minutes worth of work. Mm-hmm. But anyways, it turned out really well, and Randy did a whole bunch of guitar work for me because it was mainly revolved around the guitar.
Have you ever heard of, what's that? I think it's Rodrigo and Gabriela. Is that what it is?
Gabriela, huh?
Is that kind of like the style that you were playing?
They borrow from flamenco. They're not flamenco guitarists, but they borrow from it. They're like Otmar Lieber. He's not. Okay. He borrows from flamenco, but I wouldn't. And
put their own style.
Yeah. They put their own. Yeah,
but they're badass.
They're very good.
Pull that shit up, Jamie.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have a Jamie. One day I'll have an assistant. Right. I don't have a Jamie.
Man,
Jamie is Joe Rogan's assistant. Pulls up everything.
Really?
So yeah, if anybody wants to be my Jamie for free, we're here.
Man,
I can't pay you right now, but that Rodrigo and Gabriela. Have you guys never heard it? Oh my God! I mean, they are
very
Jesus.
Talented.
They're what, brother and sister?
Mm-hmm.
And they've been on the Tonight Show and all that stuff. And I mean, they're wicked.
Absolutely. They're very talented.
So they're not classical flamenco.
No, they borrow from those influences, but they're not flamenco guitarists. Flamenco guitar is a very, it's very unique. It's a very identifiable sound when you hear it, mm-hmm. and it's a lot like blues. And I'll be very controversial here. I'm going to say that's where blues came from.
from flamenco.
Sure. Flamenco's a much older form.
But I thought blues was started in New Orleans or Memphis.
Look at it this way. And I'm sure some people are going to think this is like, oh, no way. But look at it this way. Things aren't accidents, okay? There's nowhere in the world to where God has shown a light and gone, a style.
Right. It just develops over time.
It's never happened anywhere. It's developed over time and through different influences.
Mm-hmm.
Flamenco basically is a gypsy art, and they eventually wound up settling in Spain and stuff like that. Now, let me tell you something. Flamenco is 12 counts.
It's 12 what?
12 counts and
12 counts.
bars.
Okay.
Blues is 12 bars.
Mm-hmm.
Flamenco, as its basic, uses 1-4-5 progressions, just like blues.
Mm-hmm.
Flamenco sings about being downtrodden, suffering, poor, all the stuff.
Right.
Just like
blues.
Do you think it's an accident?
Coincidence? I think not.
The Spaniards had slaves, man. And I'm not going to say that black people didn't contribute to it. They surely did. But to say that you've created this thing all by yourself.
Did they perfect it? Refined it?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
Was it like Little Richard?
Because I mean, look, if you listen to blues and you listen to flamenco, it doesn't sound the same.
No, of course not.
So they added their own influence, but it came from somewhere else.
Right, of course. And just like flamenco came from somewhere else.
Absolutely. Flamenco comes from a lot of different places. As the gypsies would travel, they would take in the music of the locals.
Yeah, Middle Eastern
and
influence, Western European
Absolutely.
influence.
And when some of the flamencos went to Mexico and South America, they brought some of those styles back with them and incorporated them. Yeah. Not the samba, but things like the milonga.
I just made that up then, sorry.
Colombianas, things like that.
So like
the tango?
Cumbias.
The tango?
Yeah, the tango from Argentina.
Yeah, they incorporated all those things into flamenco music. That's what flamenco does. It kind of incorporates things and then brings them in. So it's all kind of like world music when you think about it.
Cultural world music.
It's been to think that it belongs to one group of people is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It's like God didn't give music just to you, man.
Yeah. Well, people want to claim it because it makes them feel special. You're like, oh, this is our stuff. Like I tell my students, like accordion music, all those corridos it's like, dude, the Germans brought the accordion, and without that, I mean, it's all German influence.
Absolutely.
Beer and tacos and
when you hear Mexican music and you hear bum 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 bum, it's like
polka.
You ever heard an oompa band before?
Yeah,
man?
oompa polka.
That's what that is.
Exactly.
It's like, come on, guys, you got it. Yes.
Boom, boom, boom,
yes, absolutely.
Oompa loompa.
Absolutely. To say that music is pure.
No,
it's
like a mutt.
Absolutely, all of it is that.
And you
way.
just put your own twist on it, and like grunge.
Absolutely,
grunge came from somewhere, and then they, Nirvana put their own twist on it, and it blew up.
To me, Nirvana is the Beatles with a distortion box.
Oh man, Nirvana.
That's what it is.
That whole '90s grunge scene, and the reason why I said I would have killed to have been in Seattle in the '90s is, I tell you the story. I grew up Southern Baptist. And so like my parents did not let me listen to secular music, the devil's music, right? And so I was kind of, I couldn't listen to that stuff. I couldn't even watch the goddamn Simpsons.
Wow.
Because that was the devil's show. Okay, so... So, I would have to sneak music. And my older brother, he kind of blew off my parents' ideals and stuff, and he did his own thing. And I would listen to rap through my brother. And, that's how I listened to Tupac and Biggie and Bone Thugs. It was all, like, amazing to me. But when I got to 9th grade in high school, I grew up kind of poor, too. And, back then the CD players were the big popular thing. If you had a CD player, oh, shit, you were somebody, right? Yeah, the girls would come up to you, hey, can I borrow your CD player?
Right, of course.
You're like, sure, baby. Just give it back in 30 minutes.
Right.
And so,
look cool.
yeah, so I befriended this guy who sat next to me in algebra class. And he was a real cool dude. And you could tell he was into like heavy metal and stuff. And he saw me just sitting there. And I go, hey, man, what are you listening to? He goes, oh, man, you got to check this out. And so he grabbed his headphones, gave them to me. I put my headphones on, and the first thing that I heard was
Rage Against the Machine. That sound, dude. Right?
And it was like I had goosebumps
Sure.
all on me. I said, "What the shit is this?" And,
right.
and I was like, "Oh my god, what is it? Who is this? What is this?" It's like, "Oh man, that's Rage Against the Machine right there,
Right.
man." And it was like, holy crap! It was a sound so incredible, so different
Yep.
that we had never heard before, and
Yeah.
it was like, oh my god! And then so after that, it was like Linkin Park,
Oh, yeah.
and crawling in,
Yeah.
and it was Rage Against the Machine, Linkin Park, and Incubus, which we're gonna go to the concert
Absolutely.
on Friday.
That's
Hell
gonna
yeah,
be a
Incubus, and God, was it Soundgarden?
Uh-huh.
And Nirvana,
Right.
of course, Nirvana, and it was like it changed my life forever.
Sure.
Because from there, I was playing in the church band at that time, and I was into God,
And you were into that
and I was into the scene. But
Right.
but that music, just listening to that one, 30-second of a Rage Against the
liberated
Machine,
you.
it changed it liberated me. Like I felt my soul leave my body.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell have I been missing on? Like,
Yep.
where has this been my whole life?
Right.
And I was like, and after that, it just kind of
Sure.
went downhill. And I was like, I can't listen to church music anymore when there's,
Sure.
smells like Teen Spirit out there. And,
Piedras Vivas. When there's Teen Spirit and Enter Sandman out there, man. Yeah.
like, I'm gonna go with Soundgarden, Chris Cornell
I
over
want to
here.
scream a little, man.
Jesus Christ,
Absolutely.
man! And that's when I really started getting into distortion pedals,
Of course.
and trying to learn that. And my Eric Clapton DVD that I never really the big old chest hair coming out. I was like, oh yeah, but
With the chains.
music changes people, man.
Yes, it does.
It changes your emotions, your feelings.
It's powerful, man.
It changes a generation.
Yes, it does.
And I tell people, like, look, the Beatles changed the generation.
Oh, yeah.
The Beatles were one of the first to
Sure.
commercialize music,
Yeah.
to put it out there,
And
advertise.
for people to see the power.
The power of music, the
Yeah.
Beatles, and then connecting two hemispheres
Absolutely.
together.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, did I say hemispheres? I
Well,
don't even know what I'm
the-
talking about. Two continents.
two
How about that?
continents, yes.
I don't want to
Europe
say
and the
something
United
stupid
States.
right now. Two continents together. I mean, basically, across the pond, Mike.
Absolutely.
And the power of music can really change people forever.
Absolutely.
Forever. And it changes your attitude.
Mm-hmm.
It changes your feeling, how you view the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, when I was teaching psychology class,
Oh, yeah.
or was it sociology or psychology, one of those classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell the students, like, look, you could be in a bad mood
Mm-hmm.
and you're driving and you put on a song that you really like, and next thing you know, you're not in a bad mood anymore.
Absolutely.
Just one song,
Mm-hmm.
one chord, one lyric, and everything is different now.
Absolutely.
And that's the power of music. And I'm sure as a musician, as a real musician, not like a fake musician like me,
Wow.
you understand that more than anybody because you live it, you breathe it,
Mm-hmm.
you do everything for it.
That's interesting because to me that experience has happened many times. I remember when I was a kid, and I remember going over to my friend Bobby Baca's house. We had those AFX racer cars back in those days, and so he had a track set, and we do the slot cars, and so we went over to his house, and his brother had 8-track tapes. And he had all the things I wasn't listening to. He had Led Zeppelin, he had ELO, he had Deep Purple, he had Kiss, he had Black Sabbath. And I remember when he first put on the Kiss album, he had a Destroyer, and he put that on. And I hated it.
You hated the Kiss?
I hated it. And that's very interesting because many years later, when I heard Nirvana for the first time, I hated it.
Really?
I hated it.
Nirvana, no.
When I first heard them for the first
Blasphemy.
time, when I first heard Kiss for the first time, I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it. It was weird because it was like, what the hell?
Right.
But then I just, we'd go over to his house and he'd keep playing the stuff. And after a while, I was like, It's pretty cool shit, man. It's pretty cool stuff. The reason I didn't like Nirvana, interesting enough, because it reminded me of how I sounded when I was 19. The sound was very raw and very
right.
And as a 19-year-old, that's not the sound that I wanted.
It's because it wasn't, attractive to what you wanted
Absolutely.
to do.
And what wasn't attractive at that time.
At that time, yeah.
You move that sound over several years later, and shit, man. But that I was like, I couldn't stand it. I love it now.
Right.
I love all their stuff, and I have all their stuff. I think they're a great band.
Where the bad folks go when they die, don't go to heaven.
Oh yeah, great songwriter, man.
Yeah. He's a great songwriter.
To me, Kurt Cobain is going back to the era of the singer-songwriter, the 70s, the singer-songwriters. Who was it? What's his name? Oh, the Cinnamon Girl guy. Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, a lot of those singers, John Denver, singer-songwriter dudes, that play their chords. They're not sitting there blowing 20 million notes. Glenn Campbell, although Glenn Campbell was a very good guitar player. Very good guitar player. Way more than the strumming chords and people here. He was way better than that.
Scales and everything.
Yeah, no, the dude was very good, man. But he goes back to that era, in my opinion. He went back to writing good songs. Because up until that point, what was happening with rock music? You had the hair kind of thing going on. And I mean, let's be honest.
The whole style.
I went through the hair thing. There were...
You had long hair?
Oh, yeah.
Did you have like a cross earring?
As a matter of fact, at one point I did.
Oh, shit.
At one point I think I did.
I can see you with the cross earring.
Yeah, I think at one point because I had long. I used to have it when I was in Seattle. I had it to the. I was the.
Oh
typical,
shit!
I was the typical grunge dude. I had the hair long to the middle of my back, and I had the goatee.
Oh.
And my hair
almost like a mullet.
No, my hair was all one length, dude.
Really?
All one length. But the thing with my hair is it gets curly. It does the ringlets, dude, by itself.
You might be Jewish, man.
You think so? Something in there?
It
was funny because one time this friend of mine goes, "Hey, you look like Jesus." And I go, "Great. All I need is a bunch of horny Christians wanting to bang Jesus."
Oh my God! Hey,
but hey, it's all good.
Seattle at that time.
It's all good. So, anyways, I had the long hair, and I had it up until probably just before my son was born. I kept my long hair. Just got tired of it after a while.
So, very quickly, how did you deal with? Because the grunge scene, '90s Seattle. You must have seen a ton of drugs.
Oh yeah.
Everywhere,
yes.
Right? Heroin being the big one.
Yeah, heroin was
right, because Kurt Cobain, Eddie Vedder, Chris Cornell. I mean, they were all on heroin, right?
Yeah.
And how did you manage to just kind of stay away from that stuff?
Because that shit scared me.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's like, look, I always have been up until several years back. I'm mainly a drinker now, but I always was just a pot and drinker type dude.
Social, kind of just laid back.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was never, I've tried a couple of other things, especially when I was in Seattle, but I never took to them. I tried most of the other drugs and stuff like that, but it was never one of those to where, ooh, and I gotta have this. Which was kind of strange because those things to me were like cigarettes. I'm the kind of guy that I can smoke cigarettes and I can quit like that.
Right, it's not addicted.
Without any of the effects. That's just the way I am. I know for other people it's not that way, but for me, I'm just one of those, I guess you could be considered lucky. I never even thought about it, but I'm just one of those guys. But the heroin thing always scared the shit out of me because to me it's like, look, man, you can smoke a lot of weed, you can drink a lot of beer, and even beer will kill you, but you have to be pretty excessive before you actually get there.
Years, even at excessive.
Yeah, and for heroin, one mistake and you're dead. And I'm like, that always just scared the shit out of me. And I was like, look, I'm not into the needles, man. Right. So I just thought it never appealed to me. But I mean, back in those days, you'd go to Starbucks and, we'd be outside drinking some coffee and there's some dude next to us talking to some people. Not enough.
Wow.
What do you think's happening? Not enough right there.
Wait. Like, so Starbucks outside on the patio.
Yeah.
In the 90s, Seattle, people shooting heroin up.
Yeah, you wouldn't see them.
Right,
but
you could tell
the
what they were
effects.
doing.
Oh, of course, the effects, man.
Oh,
They'd be, conking out right there, man. Drooling. It's like,
Christ.
okay. And also there was a park at that time. I can't remember the name of the park, but it's right there, right on Capitol Hill. And there's a reservoir there. And during the summer, you get a lot of transients going through there. Because, Seattle's very beautiful during the summer. And they hang out there and they shoot out.
Right.
Back in those days. So it was readily available. I'll tell you some stories. I remember, because I used to work in West Seattle, while I was going to school. And so being poor, I would take the city buses. And I remember one time waiting downtown for my bus to take me home. It's already about 10 o'clock. This was during the era of the war on drugs. Mm-hmm. And it was really weird. Because check this out.
The Reagan administration.
Yeah. Nancy, just say no. It's like, it was such a crock, dude. Check this out. So I'm standing there. And then all of a sudden, dude, on the corner, a bunch of people. And then gone. Just like that. Somebody obviously says, this is where the drug deal is going down. Everybody meet there at this certain time.
Wow.
Everybody meets there. They buy their shit. They're gone. And it's quick, dude. 5-10 minutes. Bam. Done. They sell their deals up. So this way they keep moving for different areas. This is where the deals are.
So they can't track them.
Not this way, man. Yeah.
Oh.
But I saw things like that. I'd be sitting there watching it. I'd be like, oh, wow. People on the bus offering you shit,
Wow.
It was rampant, man. It was everywhere.
It's just really sad that, that shit killed Kurt Cobain.
Well, like I was telling you, back in those days, there was a bet amongst the Seattle musicians. You
didn't finish telling me that story.
Yeah, so it was going to be dead first, Eddie Vedder or Kurt Cobain, because those guys were.
Wow. So they would just talk amongst themselves, like, "Hey, who do you think's going to die first, Kurt Cobain or Eddie Vedder?"
Yeah, they're a bunch of druggies.
Wow.
I think he's still alive, so I'm assuming he's probably cleaned himself up quite a bit by now. But good back in those days, man, things were pretty bad. It was kind of it's an
epidemic, right?
It was, because it was kind of very exciting because of the music, but just yet kind of scary because of all this. Lane Staley was a heroin user.
Lane Staley, Jesus, man, that guy had a voice from hell, man, and he just threw it away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Remember we were watching that the MTV Unplugged.
Oh yeah, he was terrible.
And he was just like sitting there like frail. A skeleton.
Yep.
They found a world, girl. Yeah, it's like he was already dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that guy was like
pale, man.
He died like not too long, not too much.
And it's like I told you, when I was up there, there was going to be the concerts. Metallica was playing Memorial Stadium, and Alice in Chains was going to open up for them, and I was going to go because I'd already seen Metallica several times previous to that. I hadn't seen Alice in Chains at that point, so I wanted to go see them. And they canceled. They were hanging out in some hotel downtown, all drugged up or something. Man, it's like, it's like, come on,
they
guys.
lost track of time.
Yeah.
Oh, we still got 5 hours, guys. No, it's in 5 minutes, you idiot.
Thinking, could you imagine the lawsuits? The lawsuits are.
They didn't care. You're that doped up. You don't care about goddamn lawsuits. Like, give me some more dope, man. Get out of my face.
And it was readily available back then, man. Easy to get. Like I told you, I had a friend who tried it, and he told me, he said, man, it's just the size of a pinky nail.
Yeah.
He says it's just a little bit, and I told you how they did it. They burned it or something, and they put a cup or a glass over the smoke, and then they inhaled the smoke.
Right. Oof.
And he told me, man, he said...
no, thank you, man.
He said, it's the greatest feeling I've ever had.
I bet.
And that itself then scared the shit out of me, because I'm like going, man... and this dude was an alcoholic. He already had the DTs, man.
Right.
And I'm like thinking, dude, it's a good thing you're poor, because if you had money, you'd be killing yourself with your addiction, man.
Well, the rock stars had the money, and
they killed themselves.
I mean, like, look at Guns N' Roses, man.
Sure.
Oh, sure. They got so lucky because, they're still alive, and these guys were doing it when they were like what, 19, 20? I mean,
the thing about Guns N' Roses is they're still alive. They kind of destroyed their career. They destroyed
the greatest gift of all, man.
They could have been one of the greatest, if not the greatest American band ever. And they kind of fucked that.
I mean, between Led Zeppelin and Guns N' Roses.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we know how great Led Zeppelin was. Mm-hmm. We don't know how great Guns N' Roses
and you never
could have been. We never will.
That's what drug use took away from them.
Yeah.
It took that away from them. It took
that and the arrogance of Axl Rose.
Absolutely.
Jesus.
See, and that's the thing, man. To me, it's like there is no reason to be arrogant. Mm-hmm. There is no reason to ever get to that level. And I guess for those guys, they're surrounded by yes people all the time. They're put up. It probably becomes easy to become that way.
Right.
But to me, it's like there's no reason to ever be like that.
Yeah. But Axl Rose. A lot of people don't like Axl Rose, mm-hmm. and I think he's one of the greatest songwriters because there was I read this article that when they got back together, like towards the end, mm-hmm. he started writing these long ass pieces like mm-hmm. November Rain. Mm-hmm. And Slash told him, no, dude, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. It's too long. Who the hell's going to want to listen to this piece of music this long? Mm-hmm. And it stars you with your goddamn piano and your voice. What about the rest of us? Right? So then he incorporated like some solos or whatever. But it turned out that the long pieces that they have are the greatest songs that Guns N' Roses did.
Yeah.
And it's all credit to Axl Rose, who's it's kind of like an innovator.
Absolutely.
But
the funny thing, when I first heard November Rain, it's another one of those stories. I hated it. And I hated it because I remember he starts the piano thing and he starts singing. And I was like,
when I look in
you know what I thought? Seriously, what I thought the first time I heard it, I was like, this is a very bad Frank Sinatra impersonation. That's what I thought. I was like, this is terrible. Eyes. And then I heard the solo at the end, and I was like, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah, it all comes together.
Mm-hmm. Whatever that melody is, I was like, that is a beautiful melody, man.
It all tied together in the end.
Very nicely, yeah. I mean, that's composition, man. Yep. That's the art of composition. That's taking a song and really doing something, having build of valleys and all this. Taking people on a ride, man. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So music does.
All right, man. So let's, I know you got to go soon, so we're going to wrap this up. So after Seattle, what happens? Where did you go?
After Seattle, I stayed there for a little bit longer, actually. I think I told you about when I played with my friend Elizabeth.
Tell that story, man.
So my friend Elizabeth, she calls up one night. She's like, hey, I got a gig at Under the Rail.
A gig?
I got a gig, but I got a band. I'm like,
how the hell did she get a gig with no band?
She just calls people up, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're on our way. We're the next Nirvana.
Well, you know what? That's the thing. That's what you have to remember. When I got to Seattle in 91, there were a lot of places to play that almost anybody could play.
Right.
It was almost like there were more places to play than there were bands. And there was a lot of bands. It's like I told my friend Randy back in those days. I go, Randy, some of these bands here back home, they would just not make it, man. Because it's more limited playing opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
And I told him, I said, some of these bands, I go, I'm sorry, man, back home where I'm from, they never make it, dude. But anyways, so she calls me. She tells me, and I was like, okay, well, look, I'll play guitar. And then she's like, well, I got another guitar player, so plays guitar. I said, well, I used to play drums in high school. I haven't played in a while, man.
10 years ago, I played drums.
I'll pretend. I'll play drums in high school. All right, so we'll play drums. All right. So they have this warehouse down the street. And all the bands, Candlebox, Hole, they all practice at these places because they're right there. They're
little warehouses.
Yeah, they're just wooden warehouses, dude.
Candlebox, that's another good.
Fire hazards is what they are.
Fire.
Oh, dude.
Death traps.
It's incredible, man, what passes for city codes over there, man. Anyways, but we went and practiced and stuff, and everything went pretty well. So the day of the show, I get there after work and stuff, and like I told you, Elizabeth has already pumped in 2 quarts into herself, so she's already drunk. Okay,
of course.
And then she goes off and gets high and all this stuff, and then so I'm setting up my drum set, and she's doing somersaults.
Test.
She's crushing into my drum set, man.
She's doing somersaults?
Crushing into my drum set. So I'm trying to put it together, man. And so she's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, oh, shit, man. We haven't even started, dude. So it's like, okay, fine. So then we start our first song, just like we practiced. Except that, she's got this bass solo in there, and all of a sudden, It's not the same bass solo that she played in practice. She's just looking at the ceiling and she's going, on her bass. And I'm like going, okay,
is that
where
the cue?
are we going with this? You know? So we eventually make it out of there and we end the song. Nobody ends together. It's terrible. And it gets worse. So then Elizabeth decides to take her clothes off.
Oh, Jesus.
So off comes the top. And then she grabs the microphone and she goes, fuck me. and I'm behind her, bro. So then...
What?
I'm behind her. So she's got these boots, okay, up to the knees. And she pulls down her leather tards all the way down and she bends over. So that her butt is right to me.
Oh, full moon, huh?
Well, it would have been nice if there was no cottage cheese there. But it wasn't.
Oh my God! Did you say cottage cheese?
Yes, it wasn't a nice butt. It wasn't J-Lo or anything like that, you know.
Oh man.
So yeah, so she bends over and then the guy comes up and lady, we're not in a strip bar, and so they kick us out and all this kind of stuff. And she comes in the next day and I'm like, I don't want to be in a band where people come to see you because the girl's gonna strip, man. What music? That chick's taking her clothes off. You know?
That's an awesome rock band song.
Oh God. So she's like, the next day I see her and she's like, I got carried away, you know, just a little too much energy. And I'm like, what the hell? Too much energy. Give me a break, man.
Girl, more like too much of something else.
Oh, God. So needless to say, that's the last time I played with those guys.
Yeah.
And so after that, I moved down to San Diego. My sister had been trying to get me to move down there for years. And I finally said, yeah, I got tired of clouds, man. And resting.
Yeah, it's kind of gloomy up in Seattle, huh?
7 years of that shit got old, man.
I mean, beautiful city, but
absolutely,
the weather is
absolutely.
like
you have to like that.
And it's
that
cold as hell. Huh?
Yeah, you have to like that gloominess and no sunshine for months on end. And so I went to San Diego. And,
beautiful city, one of my
absolutely.
favorite cities in the world, man.
Absolutely, and I played with a couple of people there, but didn't really do very much.
Like a rock band, or
yeah, I just played with other guitar players. We just got together. We'd go over to their homes and we just jam and do some things. But I never really got into getting anything in there and playing.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed there for about 2 years, and then I came here for about 6 months, and then I took off to Tampa Bay with my sister.
Okay.
And I lived there for a year. And when I was in Tampa Bay, I just kind of practiced, didn't really play with anybody. I played with a couple of dudes, but these guys were like, they're kind of softies, man.
Right.
You know?
They're not...
When the dude would sing, he would sing like this. I'd have to turn the mic up all the way up, man. And I'd be going, come on, man, sing. Come on, dude. Belt the damn thing out, man.
Are you a singer or not?
And so it was like, so that didn't work, you know. And so, just kind of played a little bit. And then from Tampa, I made my way to El Paso. I was going to go to San Francisco. But at that point, I was tired of moving, bro.
If you're going...
Yeah, to San Francisco. But I was tired of moving.
So now you're back in El Paso, your hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're trying to realize your dream of becoming a composer. So how does that how is that going to work, or what does it take to write something and get it published, or what do you want, like a movie? You want to put it in a movie?
Well, no, I want all those opportunities, because see, I don't want to say that I only want to do this, because then that limits my opportunity.
Right.
You know, if I can write for some movies and do that kind of stuff, and you know, interestingly enough, there's a lot of opportunities for composers out there. There's movies, there's commercials, there's motivational videos. There's a lot. There's
you hear that shit in all the motivational videos.
Yeah, I mean, everything has music in it. You know, so all these little things are opportunities for composers to write music. And for me, what I want to do is I want to make a living at it. Whether I become famous at it or not, I really don't care. Like I told you, I'm the kind of guy that eventually, as I was playing music, I realized I didn't want to be a rock star, because I don't think I could handle something like that. You know, I don't think that's for a guy like me. I'm the guy that, you be the rock star, I'll make you sound good, I make a lot of money, I can go spend it, and nobody knows who I am.
Right. You have the fame, the fortune and the power without the fame.
Absolutely. That's the guy that I want to And so, as I got, and then especially when I got to Seattle, you kind of see the fame, you get to meet, you see the fame close up. And then you kind of see how it affects people, and it was like, it's
well,
hard.
you see Kurt Cobain and all
you
these
see
guys
what
in
they go
depression and stuff. You're like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to be a rock
You see
star.
what they go through, man. It's like, and that thing about guys like Kurt Cobain, he's a pretty private dude, and to then toss that guy out there into the public like that is like,
that's the thing we're talking about. Kurt Cobain didn't want the fame.
No, he didn't.
He didn't want the fame. He was a grunge, hardcore grungy guy, very private, and he just happened to make badass music, and the world caught notice, and it they got power, they got fame, they got money, and it's kind of just rubbed them the wrong way, and he got all depressed and ended his life.
It's shocking. It's shocking. I mean, think about it. Your life, to a certain extent, no longer belongs to you. You can't go to a restaurant and eat without having a mouthful and somebody coming and asking you for an autograph.
Right. Exactly.
Or something like that. I even heard stories. I think Eminem said this one story. He's like, I'm sitting in a bathroom stall, man. He's going, and somebody's passing a piece of paper under the stall.
Hey, bro, can you sign this for me, man?
I'm like,
this is my 2-year-old.
I'm like, come on, man.
Let me take a shit in peace, man.
I'm
At
like,
least for 2 seconds, please. 2
think
seconds.
About how ridiculous it would get, So I'm like, for private people, or people who enjoy their privacy, I think it's a nightmare. Yep. It becomes a nightmare because it's like your life doesn't really belong to you anymore.
Yep.
And so for me, like I said, as I went through those, like, I want to be a great musician more than I want to be a rock star. And there's a difference. There is a difference there. But going back to the classical stuff, so I'm writing into classical music now. What I'm doing at this point is just going back and familiarizing myself with the use of the instruments, combinations, putting things together. Writing songs. I'm using Beethoven and Mozart as models. And then what I'm going to do is, as I go through this process, start getting musicians to record it. That's the main thing, because you have to remember, if I'm writing a symphony, for example, that's a lot of musicians I'm going to have to find to record. Right.
And you have to find them?
Yeah, because it's like, who's going to do that for me?
Now, how do you pay them? Like, do you have to have a budget, or you got to have money saved up? And how much? So, like, let's say you want to write a symphony. What's a typical standard piece?
Well, let's say if you're using a Beethoven piece or a Mozart piece, you're usually talking 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, 2 trombones, timpani, then a violin section, a viola section, a violin 2 section as well, some cellos and some basses.
Okay.
Now you have to remember that in Mozart's day, they had the same concerns we did. They didn't have any money. So they really couldn't have... you see the orchestras today, these big orchestras playing Mozart's music. Mozart never heard that.
Wow.
Mozart never had 12 or 15 or 20 violins.
There's a small little quartet.
He didn't have those kind of money. He probably had 6 first, 6 seconds, maybe 4 or 6 violas, 4 cellos, 2 basses, depending on what they were able to afford. They didn't have things like that. So the way that you kind of hear it now is like, it's not the way it really was.
So to produce and compose and produce, you and 6 people, how much is that going to cost?
Well, it depends on who I'm getting.
Oh, okay. Right. Skill level.
Yes, absolutely. If I get the top professionals, that's going to be some top dollar. However, the advantage to the top dollar is you'll get a top quality recording.
What's top dollar for like an hour?
Oof, man. Well, let me put it this way. And this is going back a couple of... I was making myself what I was charging for a classical guitar, and this was several years back. I was charging $150 for 1 hour.
That's pretty good money.
Okay,
yeah.
Absolutely.
You got to pay 6 people $150 an hour.
Let's say that it hasn't changed. This was several years back, okay, so I'm thinking now it's probably
inflation, baby.
Yeah, I'm thinking 175, 200 maybe.
Yeah.
So you can see that it could get pretty expensive. Now, if you can get some students who are good players,
Right.
You can pay them
$50.
a little bit less, $50, whatever, pay a little bit less and maybe get some good work. But that's the thing. You're going to be limited by the quality of the recording that you're going to put out there.
Right.
And there really is no way around the fact that you're going to have to save some money and spend good.
And then you got to pay for what? Recording studio and all that?
Pay for the recording studio time, pay for the musicians, pay for the producer, the engineer.
Equipment, like mixers and microphones?
Well,
that comes with the studio?
Yeah, it comes with the studio.
Okay.
But, I mean, you're paying for all that. So everything has to, when you get in there, it has to be very professional, very okay.
On time, and everybody has to know what they're doing.
Yeah, we're there to work. We're there to do several recordings, pieces together, and, that kind of stuff. And so as a composer, it's like anything else. When you get out of music school, let me give it to you this way. If you're an engineering student at UTEP, when you graduate, because it's a good engineering school, there's people ready to hire you.
Mm-hmm.
They're ready to interview you, ready to, hey, join our ranks.
Right.
You get out of music school and it's like, good luck.
Exactly.
Unless if you have a teaching degree, it's like, good luck. You go out there and you make your way. And you have to remember, as I've said, the things that youngsters don't realize is it's a business.
Mm-hmm.
It's called music business for a reason.
Right.
And you have to remember that is what it is. You are building a business. You are selling your product. So if you want to be a musician, don't give it away for free.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. So last thing very quickly. So once you write a piece, get some people, compose it, you have your music, what do you do with it?
At that point, what I want to do is I want to get somebody who, like they push artists or promote songs. Somebody who goes to radio stations, I don't know if they still exist, like back in the day, and say, hey, got some good music, of a new CD coming out. In other words, get an agent to sell my music.
Mm-hmm. So do you have like a mixtape for symphony? Hey, like you pop your trunk, like, hey dog, I got this Mozart Beethoven mix. What's up? It's fire. It's lit. It's lit, son. You ever heard that Vivaldi? That Vivaldi, son?
The Vivaldi dude?
Well, I got something better.
Right. The Mozart guy? How about the Beethoven dude?
Yeah.
How about that chopping guy?
Yeah, that chopping.
He's a real chopper.
Hey man, he chopping the block on fans, yo.
And that batch dude?
Man, he ain't got nothing on me.
Right.
Goddamn batch.
That batch.
Bastard batch. All right, so let's wrap this up because I know you got to go. It's almost time. Last thing, do's and don'ts for people who are in your field, who are just starting off as music students. Do's and don'ts of becoming a composer.
Do write a lot. Don't worry too much about whether it's great or not, because you're going to have certain days where you're going to write crap, man, and it's just the way it is. You have to push through, and you're going to have more days of those probably than days where everything just flows. There's some days where I write and everything just goes perfect. There's some days where I write and I'm just sitting there looking at the page going, man, there ain't shit going on here. But you got to go through the process. That's part of it.
Right.
So do write a lot, write every day, make a schedule, man. Make sure that you write. If you don't plan it to have it in your day, you aren't going to make time for it.
Right.
Okay? So I wake up at 6 in the morning. This is your example. You wake up at 6. Okay, you don't go to work till 9. All right, you got several hours there where you get yourself ready and you can have at least an hour there to compose.
Mm-hmm.
Every day at the same time, get yourself in there and set yourself up, man. Set up a routine. Remember, you're building habits. Secondly, network, man. Get to meet a lot of musicians. Write emails. Talk to people.
Exactly.
Talk to people. Send professional musicians. Ask them some questions. They might answer you. You never know. Go to conventions, man. Go to seminars. Get yourself involved. Remember, it's not always how great you are, although you have to be good at this art. But it also has to do with who you meet and the people that can help you along the way.
Right.
You have to remember that a lot of the great people, Jobs, all these guys that are billionaires had a mentor. Okay?
Exactly.
So
I need a mentor, shit.
Yeah, and so you have to remember to find yourself one. If you can't find one, One good way to do a mentor is to just simply find somebody that you admire in history or whatever and read up on them. And then ask yourself, how would this person behave in this situation? How would this person think? Think like the person that you want to become.
Right. You want to be rich? Do what rich people do.
Absolutely. You want to be a composer? You do what composers do. You want to be a musician? You do what musicians do. Musicians do not go off wrestling and boxing and running and marathons. They do on the side, but for the most part, they do music all the time. That's what they do, right?
Absolutely, man.
You know, boxers,
Absolutely.
What do? They box, man.
Oh, you
know?
gotta eat, sleep, and breathe boxing
Absolutely.
if you want to compete at the highest level.
Absolutely. There is no other way.
Yeah.
You either give your heart to it and you take your lumps, and you are going to get some. You have to remember something. And I think this is one of the things that really holds people back. Don't be afraid to fail, man, because you are going to fail.
Exactly.
Use those failures as a learning experience to move you forward. So you land on your ass. Big deal. You're not the first human being to, and you aren't going to be the last.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like I always tell my students, how did you learn how to walk?
Right.
You don't even remember the
trial and error.
You don't remember the thousands of times that you fell and give yourself some good knocks.
Chingazos.
Yeah, absolutely. the chichotas, remember?
God.
Just learning how to walk. But you think nothing about it now. Absolutely. And it's like I tell my students as well. Mozart was a genius, but had he not worked hard, that genius would never be realized.
Exactly.
You know?
You can have all the talent, you can be the most talented, but if you don't put the work in,
Absolutely.
if you don't put the time in, you don't
Absolutely.
dedication,
Absolutely.
it's not gonna realize.
Absolutely.
It's not gonna come to fruition.
Absolutely.
It's a big SAT word there.
You know, talent is good, but hard work trumps talent. Talent only trumps hard work if it works hard too.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. All right, man. Well, Daniel, appreciate you being on the
thanks for
podcast,
having me,
man.
It was a
Yeah.
blast.
Hey, it was
Really enjoyed
awesome. It was
the
great.
Orange juice was fantastic.
Yeah, I got apple juice myself.
Exactly.
I spilled some on myself too. Damn bottle of apple juice. So anyway, obviously you are a well-rounded musician. You've lived in different cities. You've heard different music. You play different music. Now you're composing. We wish you all the best.
Thanks, man.
And we obviously have to come back 6 months, a year from now.
Oh, yeah.
We have to track you. We want to hear your music in some movies, some shows, or something.
Absolutely.
And I feel it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. You are an amazing talent.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, we'll check back with you.
Absolutely.
And once again, appreciate you so much.
Thanks for having me, man. I really
All right.
appreciate it.
So our very first interview, this is going to be recorded in history. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Appreciate you. See you guys.